Try again.
So you mean how I got this one or how I got this one?
The one in yellow.
So the d raised to m multiplied by size of y, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So this is something we discussed a little bit last time, but I'll just go over it again. Okay, maybe last time it was not super clear. So what I really want is I'm looking at this joint probability table, right, which is x1 up to xm given y, right? So what it means is that if I'm looking at this table, imagine right now for simplicity that each feature, as I said, right, takes in a value okay, so let us assume that this is 0, 1 until d minus 1. Okay, so that means that each xi takes d values. Okay, so now imagine that if I'm having a table over here, right? The table is, what is this table, right? So this table is each configuration, each unique configuration of x1, x2 until xm comma y, right? And the probability. This is the probability of x1, x2 until xm given y, right? So this is like each unique configuration. So for example, right, one configuration is like zero, like everything zero, right? And the label also zero. So this is one configuration. So this is the probability of x1 equal to 0, sorry, x2 equal to 0 until xm equal to 0 given y, right? Another configuration is where everything else is 0, just that xm is 1, right? And the probability is still, and so on and so forth. So just from simple combinatorics, can you tell me what will be the size of this table? And by the way, like each entry over here takes a value between 0 to d minus 1, right? So each entry can take d possible values. So what will be the size of this table? And suppose like size of y, suppose size of y is equal to k, right? So I have k classes. So xi takes values between 0 to d minus 1 and y takes values from 0 to k minus 1, right? So that means that y is between 0 to k minus 1. So what will be the size of this table? Yeah, d raised to m multiplied by k, right? So this is the size of this table now, right? And essentially, this is the amount of compute that is required for this, right? So I basically require now for each of these, I need to learn each of these probabilities because I'm not really making any assumption, okay? But when I do the ninth base, that time what I'm doing is that I just need to actually store these values, right? And because as I said, right, this has d possible values now, each xi has d possible values, right? So that means that for each feature, so for each I, there will just be d multiplied by k, right, number of parameters here. And this is d multiplied by k um, multiplied by m, where m is the number of classes. So this is the configuration of 9 base. Okay. So this is the question, right? So how many parameters? So actually, I can kind of answer the parameters here. What is there over here is actually, maybe you can ignore this right now. First of all, this should not be d, this should be m, right? And I just looked at this and maybe here this is k, right? What we use. So this is mk, but here I just assume that I'm looking at binary features. So if I'm looking at basically each feature being binary, right? Then I just need to store the probability of xi equal to 0 given y, right? I don't need to store p of xi equal to 1 given y. So that's why I just need one parameter. So in fact, actually that kind of reminds me. I don't really require d parameters here. I really require only d minus 1 parameters because in some sense the dth parameter can be inferred if I learn the other d minus 1 parameters. But anyway, this is like a slight detail, right? It's not super critical. I think you can kind of implement this one way or the other. Anyways, for now, I will actually keep this as DMK, and the reason is we'll actually see in some time when we look at the learning, we'll actually see why this is, right. But But maybe for simplicity, I'll actually assume that, suppose X is composed of M features taking values in 0 to D minus 1, right? Then I'll just kind of represent this as order MDK. Okay, so just kind of get rid of this. So this is order MDK. Okay, this is what we looked at over here as well. So like as you can see, right, this is essentially order D raised to MK, right? And thanks to the naive Bayes, right, we have now we just need to store P of xi, and actually additionally we also need P of y, right? Because you require, I mean, when you're looking at the likelihood, right, we'll require P of xi given y, and we'll require P of y as well. So it's DMK parameters of P of xi given y, right? And it is order k number of parameters for P of y. Okay, so this is the total number of parameters we require with naive Bayes, which is actually much lesser than the exponential case. Okay, any questions until now? Okay, so if things are clear, then we'll look at essentially now the likelihood, the learning problem with naive Bayes, right? And we'll also look at the inference problem, right? So in the naive Bayes classifier, I have a prior distribution, right? So I require P of y as my prior distribution, and I require M conditionally independent features x given y, right? So it means for each xi, I have P of xi given y, right? And once I have learned this, right? That means that once I have these learned parameters, imagine that I already have a table, right? So I already have for every feature I already have P of xi given y, and I have P of y, right? The inference problem is very easy. What I need to do is that I just do an argmax over P of y multiplied by P of xi given y. The reason why I'm doing this is because this term, right, which is P of y multiplied by P of x1 until xn given y, is nothing but the joint distribution of P of x1, x2 until xm comma y. Okay, so the naive Bayes inference problem, right? That is to find the most likely y. I will do this by actually maximizing the joint distribution over the probabilities and y. Okay, and this is nothing but actually doing an argmax over P of y multiplied by the product of I from 1 to n, P of xi given y. Okay, so this slide is talking about the inference step. Okay. Then the question is, what is the maximum likelihood? How do we do the learning for naive Bayes? Okay, so here in this slide, I've just given the final answer, but I'll actually derive this maybe in the next slide quickly. Just so that, the derivation is a little bit more involved, but I think maybe with the derivation, you'll understand naive Bayes a little better. And of course, let me know if you have any questions, right? So the final answer, it turns out, with naive Bayes is very intuitive, okay? By the way, this is all with what is known as a discrete naive Bayes, okay? So the reason why this is a discrete naive Bayes, and there is also a continuous naive Bayes, which maybe I will very quickly go over towards the end of this naive Bayes class, right? But the discrete naive Bayes is the reason is discrete is because I'm assuming that the features actually are not continuous features, but they are discrete features. So to really use the discrete naive Bayes, even if I have a continuous feature, right? So imagine I have my continuous feature, which is so like say in like the house kind of prediction problem, right? We had like number of bedrooms, for example, right? Number of bedrooms is basically say 0, 1, 2, 3. This is a discrete feature, right? So this feature is inherently discrete. But imagine, so say x is equal to number of bedrooms, right? This is a discrete feature. But if x is equal to these, say the area of the home, right? Then the area of the home is not a discrete feature, right? But what we can do is we can actually discretize this feature. So we can divide this into bins, right? So we can say that if the area, for example, is less than, I don't know, 500 square feet, it is bin one, right? If it's 500 to 600 square feet, it is bin two, and so on and so forth, right? So we can actually discretize this into various bins, and then I have bin zero, bin one, bin two, and so on and so forth, right? So to really do naive Bayes, what we need to do with our features is we need to discretize the features. This is just an implementational detail, right? But I think it's important to understand this. Once we discretize the feature, then we can actually do this discrete naive Bayes, right? And it turns out that like as we discussed last time, right? We have these two. I mean, sorry, as we discussed in the last slide, we have these two parameters. One is the probability of y equal to small y, right? And the second is the probability of xi equal to small xi given y equal to small y, right? And this parameter is actually basically the ratio of the count. So I see my data set, right? And in my data set, I see, so suppose I look at this particular quantity, which is essentially the probability of y equal to y. This probability is very intuitive. All I do is I take a count of the number of examples, which is of class small y, right? And I divide that with the total number of examples, right? And that is my discrete estimate of the probability y equal to small y. Okay, and for the features is a little bit more difficult, but it's basically the same. I look at the instantiation xi, right? So as I said, for example, last time, xi here is like one of the values from say 0 to d minus 1, right? For simplicity, assume that each feature takes in capital D values. Okay, so this xi will be one of the values from 0 to capital D minus 1, right? And essentially what I do is that I take a count of, given this xi, which belongs to one of these values, I see the count of this xi in my data set, right? Given that the class is small y. So essentially what I do is that I take one of the values of xi. So again, xi here is the ith feature. Okay, so this is one of the values from 0 to d minus 1 of the ith feature, and I take the class label y. Okay, and in my data set, I look at the count of how many times this comes in, and then I divide by the count of the rest of the value. So I take the sum over all the other xi prime, right? Which also has the same thing. So actually, this kind of is very intuitive. This is nothing but the number of examples. So actually, this denominator is in fact nothing but count of y equal to y, because what I'm really doing is that I'm taking a sum over all the other feature values that this particular ith feature will take, right? And this normalization factor is nothing but the count of y equal to y. So it's exactly the examples, the number of examples which belong to class y. Any questions with this? We have not yet derived this, but I just wanted to get the intuition out first. Any questions here? Okay, there are no questions. So let's actually look at a quick derivation, okay, of how we can come up with the maximum likelihood. Okay, so assume that I have my data set here, which is basically x1, y1, right, until x, what is the notation I'm using? Okay, so here let's say this is x capital M, y capital M, right? So this is this is my training data set, and the likelihood, and again each xi over here, right, is basically nothing but of kind of feature vector, right? So this is xi1 until xij, until xi small m, right? So I think in the notation we have been using small m as the number of features here. Okay, so I'll just define the notation first. M is a number of training examples, and small m is a number of features. Okay, so the maximum likelihood estimation is where I basically look at this joint distribution, right? So this is essentially the joint distribution of my data, right? So it's essentially data given my parameters, right? And this is going to be the probability of the product of I from 1 to capital M, right? Of P of X. Okay, so we can write it this way, right? So this is P of X I joint distribution with Y, right? And this is nothing but the product of the probability of I from 1 to n, the probability of P of Y multiplied by P of xi1, xi2 until xim given y. Okay, so all I've done right now is enlarge this, right? And because of the naive Bayes assumption, what we have is that this is nothing but the product of I from 1 to capital M, P of Y, product of, so actually there's one more product inside, right? So this product is nothing but the product of J from 1 to small m, P of X, Xi J given Y, right? So again, I'm taking the ith instance and I'm taking the jth feature of this ith instance, okay? And then what I do is that I take the log on both sides, right? So this is log of P of D given theta. Okay, so this will nothing but be the sum of I from 1 to M. And this is, by the way, yi actually. This is yi. Sorry about that. So this is log of Pyi plus okay, this is a little bit more involved, but I think just want to give the main intuition out of how this is done. Okay, so this is over the features given by. Okay, so now comes the part of the kind of real magic. Okay, so this is the expression now, but what are the parameters? So I've not yet spoken about, I mean, I've just introduced the likelihood. I've not yet introduced what the parameters are, right? So I'll just create another slide. Okay, so just recall this expression. Now my parameters, as I discussed this, define phi y, right, to be basically the probability of y for every label y in capital Y, right? So I'll give you an example. Suppose capital Y is like 0 to k minus 1, right? Then phi y will basically take k values, okay? Basically then also define parameters as phi of I'll call this xi y, right, for the ith feature as p of basically xi given y, right? So this means that for a given y in y and for a given xi in 0 to d minus 1, right? This quantity is the probability that essentially it is phi of xi comma y, right? So these are going to be the parameters. So this is going to be k parameters as I discussed last time, right? And this is going to be d multiplied by k multiplied by m parameters, okay? So now what we can do is we can actually put this back over here. So this is essentially log of p of the data given the parameter phi, okay? And this log likelihood is now I'm actually going to do a slight trick over here, okay? Since my yi is going to take one of values from 0 to k, right? I can rewrite this expression. I can rewrite, so maybe actually before rewriting I'll just write this down clearly. Okay, so this is let's see, sorry, I just need to refer. So this is I from 1 to m, p of yi, okay, plus sum of j from 1 to m, small m, this is capital M, probability of xij given yi. Okay, I hope I have yi. Okay, I don't have. So there's a typo. This should be yi actually over here. Okay, so all of this is yi. Anyways, so this is the expression, right? So I'm going to rewrite this a little bit now to actually use the counts. Okay, so because I'm taking this sum and this yi now can take, one of the values from 0 to k minus 1, I can rewrite this, right? I can rewrite this first expression as actually a sum of I'm just reparameterizing this a little bit, I from 0 to k, right? Or actually maybe y from 0 to k. And here I have the count, I have cy. Cy is the count of the examples. So basically cy, right, is equal to number of examples, number of training examples in D, number of train in D, right, with class Y. Okay, so this is what cy is. So I'm going to write this. So you can write this as the C of Y multiplied by, okay, this particular parameter, which is phi y. Okay, and the same intuition basically carries over here. So I'm just going to kind of, I'm not going to do this again, but this is actually a sum from J. Yeah, so this takes in basically d possible values, and then you also have a sum from y from 0 to k, right? So this is d cross k sum, and this is nothing but c of, this is a count of xi comma y multiplied by phi of xi comma y. Okay, so again the same intuition carries over here. Yeah, this, maybe if this does not make sense, let me know, but we'll actually go over an example quickly in the next slide. So we'll go over this a little bit more detail. Okay, so this is actually the likelihood, right? And this is what we want to maximize. So, okay, so far so good. Can someone tell me whether are there any natural constraints that I need to add over here? In particular, are there any constraints on phi of y and phi of xi comma y? Any idea? Anyone? What are some constraints on phi of y? Anyone? Just a wild guess. Are you guys following this discussion actually until now? Okay, there's a lot of silence. Can you hear me? Can you see the screen? Can you guys hear me? Hello? Okay, so you can hear me. Okay, so anyways, as I said, it's slightly more advanced, but just okay. So the constraints here are actually that the, yeah, those are the probability exactly. Yeah, so actually those are the constraints, right? So we need that phi of y to be the probability. So we require that the sum over y, phi of y should be 1, right? And we require that the sum over um, j from 0 to d, sum over y equal to 0 to k, phi of xi comma y, right? This is a joint probability, right? This should be equal to 1. Okay, so this quantity in green, right, is the term that needs to be maximized. So this term basically you can call it like the likelihood of phi, subject to these constraints, right? So essentially the problem becomes like maximize phi, the likelihood of phi subject to the constraints that the sum over y phi y is equal to 1 and the sum over j is equal to 0 until n, sum of y equal to 0 until k of phi of xi comma y is equal to 1. So this are the two, this is how we need to do. And then I think you just need to take the Lagrangian and basically solve this, and that is how you will get this particular this particular um, this particular expression actually. So this particular expression and this expression actually comes by solving this Lagrangian for the naive base. Okay, so I won't derive this right now. Yeah, so can you again explain again from introducing? Oh, okay, yeah. So thank you. So yeah. So essentially, I think what you're saying is how do I go from this step to this step, right? So for simplicity, I'll just talk about this because this is a little bit easier. This is slightly more involved, but the intuition remains the same. Okay, so I will just talk about this case right now. Okay, so this case, what happens is that I am on my entire data set. What is this expression, right? On this expression is on my entire data set. I am summing over the probability of yi, right? So imagine, I'll just add one slide over here. Okay, so maybe I'll just say explanation. So when I talk about this term, which is probability of yi, right? This term, essentially, imagine that my data set now contains like x1, y1, right? Until xm, yn, right? For simplicity, just assume that my data that I just have binary, right? So basically yi is just between, so just assume right now for simplicity that yi is either 0 or 1. Okay, so then what I can do is that when I look at the probability of p of yi, again recall that my parameters here are just probability that y is equal to 0, which is phi 0, right? And the probability that y is equal to 1, which is phi 1. These are my two parameters, right? So this sum that is there, I can rewrite this as taking the count of the number of examples with y equal to 0, right? Multiplied by phi 0, right? Plus the count of the number of examples with y equal to 1 multiplied by phi 1. So what this means is that out of this entire data set, suppose here m is equal to 100, right? Out of this entire data set, suppose number of labels like C0, like the number of instances with label 0, suppose is 60, right? And number of instances with label 1 is 40. In this particular sum, right, I will have 60 terms that have phi 0 and 40 terms that have phi 1, right? So I can exactly write this now as 60 multiplied by phi 0 plus 40 multiplied by phi 1. Does it make sense? Does it answer your question, Xianxi? Okay. Yeah. So this is what we are basically doing over here. So that's how you get the counts, and that's how you get the counts over here as well. Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you. Yeah. So I think, yeah, please do ask questions. Okay. By the way, I just realized that there was one typo over here. So sorry, I made a mistake. Actually, this particular probability, right? So this is actually a conditional probability that I have over here. So this is actually the probability of p of xji given yi, right? So because it's a conditional probability, what we have is that this particular count, right, is essentially given yi what is the number of instances of xi, right? And this term here is the conditional probability, not the entire probability. So because it's the conditional probability, this really represents the probability of xi given y. So I don't actually have this outer sum over here. I just have the sum that yeah, so sorry about that. I just have this particular sum actually. So I just have the sum of 0, j equal to 0 until d of phi xi y equal to 1. That's all. So this is the constraint over here. Yeah. Anyways, but I think that the main insight, I think you guys follow the main insight, right? So I think maybe if you want, when you go home, you can just derive this taking the Lagrangian and actually try to make sure that you get this, that you actually get these expressions. Okay. Okay, so we'll look at a quick example of naive Bayes, right? Just to understand naive Bayes, just to understand the naive Bayes calculations a little better. So the data set here is that I have different days, right? And the target variable is whether I'm playing tennis or not, right? So it's yes or no. So the features are that so this is a completely categorical or discrete data set, right? So my features are that my outlook is either sunny, overcast or rain, right? And the temperature is either hot, cold or mild, right? The humidity is either high or normal, and the wind is like weak or strong, right? So yeah, so I'll just go over a few different calculations here, but I mean, just kind of seeing what the parameters here. But can someone tell me before I actually we actually derive this, that what will be the parameters? Can someone tell me a few parameters? So like the py parameters, right? What will be the py parameters? Can someone tell me? Yeah, the probability of playing tennis or not, right? So essentially you will have two parameters, which is phi 0, which belongs to whether that you don't play tennis, right? And you have phi 1. So on this data set, what is phi 0? What is phi 0 in this on this in this data set? Yeah, 5 over 14, right? So this is 5 over 14, and similarly phi of 1 is going to be, what will it be? It'll be 9 over 14, right? Because it's the other way. Okay. So okay, good. So we get the simple parameters, right? And now what about the features, right? So let's see. Um, can someone tell me that if I have so what will be the feature corresponding to sunny comma no, right? So the label is no and the outlook is sunny. What will be this probability according to the naive Bayes model? What will be this probability? Probability that it's sunny but you don't play tennis. 3 over 5, exactly, right? Because sunny, this is sunny when it's no, this is sunny and no, and I guess there is one more, this is sunny and no, right? And the other no guys, right, have rain and rain, right? So this feature is going to be 3 over 5, right? And similarly, the phi of rain comma no is going to be 2 over 5. I think it's 2 over 5, right? And then on the other hand, the phi of overcast comma no is actually 0 because you don't have any data instances like this, right? So I think you get the point. You can actually calculate. So similarly, you can do this for hot and for cool and for mild, right? So you can basically compute phi of hot comma no, right? And compute this on the data set, right? So basically, as you can see, naive Bayes is an extremely simple classifier. All you really need is just to compute these conditional probability tables, right, for each of your features, store this, right, store these parameters, and then just basically that's it. That's all the learning is. And then you just apply this on inference. Okay. What will be the number of parameters over here? In this particular data set, what will be the number of parameters? Can we work this out? How many? Okay, so I have two parameters, phi0. So I have two label parameters, right? With respect to the outlook, how many parameters do I have? Three? No, I don't have. I won't have three parameters. It's a cross product between the feature values and the label, right? So the parameters are going to be, yeah, it's 6. So it's not 3 into 3 into 2 into 2 into 2. That would have been had you had to store the entire joint table, right? But it's actually 6 because so this is the number of parameters for p of y, right? The number of parameters for p of xi given y is you need all the values of xi and you need all the values of y, right? So for outlook, you will actually you have three possible values of outlook and you have two labels, right? So there are actually 6 parameters for outlook. Similarly, for temperature, what are the number of parameters we have? So again, there are like how many are this? This is also 6, I believe, right? So there are 6 for temperature, and there are again 6 for humidity. No, so humidity there are only 4, and similarly for wind there are 4, right? So the total number of parameters are going to be 20 plus 2, 22, right? So there are 22 parameters in this naive Bayes model on this data set. Okay, is this very clear? Does it make sense? Okay. So, all right. So this is almost the last slide, I believe. Okay, maybe one or two more slides. So usually features are not conditionally independent, right? So this is one major issue that so the naive Bayes assumption will actually oftentimes be violated. Yet, in fact, it performs surprisingly well. And in fact, it more often than not, it performs really well on discrete data sets. So if I have categorical features, right, or discrete features, oftentimes you see that naive Bayes performs reasonably well, right? I mean, the conditional independence assumption is a very strong assumption, but still, even making this very strong assumption, it still performs pretty okay. And the reason is one possible reason. Of course, there have been many papers, in the last 2 decades, which have tried to understand this reason why naive Bayes performs well. One possible reason the community tries to kind of argue this is because for naive Bayes, even though you're making the conditional probability assumption, right? Uh, you only really want to get the map inference, right? So you want to get the so basically you want to get the argmax or the max of p of x comma y, right? So you don't really care if your p of x comma y is really well calibrated or not. In fact, for naive Bayes, it will not be well calibrated. What I mean by well calibrated is that p of x comma y will not be a very good approximation of the true p of x comma y. And right, and the main reason is because this assumption is not true. But we don't really care if this the model is well calibrated or not. What you really need is that the max inference should hold. So essentially we should be able to kind of maximize this over the labels and get the correct answer, right? So from this perspective, if you view it from that perspective, the conditional independence assumption is not really a bad assumption. The maximizers might be roughly in the same direction, right? So again, this is for binary classification, you just have to figure out the correct side of 0.5, right? Not the actual probability. So even if you get 0.51 as the probability estimate, or you get 0.99 as a probability estimate, right? Both are going to be the same, right? So this is one of the reasons why naive Bayes works well. But one thing to keep in mind if you want a good probability, right? So imagine you are trying to predict a disease, right? You are trying to predict whether a person has, say, jaundice, right? Or a say a person has a cold or flu, right? Um, well, I mean, one model could just say that, okay, I think a person has flu, right? But that is not good enough. I mean, in a real world application, you really want to be able to give a certain probability, right? I want to say that, okay, my model is 90% confident that you have flu, right? Um, Unfortunately, the naive Bayes model is a very bad model for this. You will not get reliable probability estimates, right? And the main reason for not having reliable probability estimates is because the probability assumption itself does not hold. The conditional independence assumption will not hold. If the conditional independence assumption holds, then fine. I can assume that you have good estimates, good probability estimates, right? So that is one caveat of naive Bayes to keep in mind. And the other kind of issue with naive Bayes is that if you never see a particular training instance, right? So for example, over here, you never see a training instance where you have what is it, overcast, right? And no tennis. So because you don't see any instance of overcast and no tennis, with just 14 training examples, your model will be confident that whenever it is overcast, you don't go to play tennis, which may not necessarily, I mean, in this case, you have very few number of features, it might be okay, right? But in general, you don't want to make such a strong assumption, right? You don't want to be overconfident and say that, if just with a very limited amount of data, if it's overcast, I just declare that I don't play tennis, right? So if you don't see any data, the naive Bayes assumption, the naive Bayes model is going to have a zero probability, right? So any kind of instance that has overcast in it, right, is going to predict no tennis. The naive Bayes model will predict no tennis because of this reason, which is not necessarily a good idea, right? So this is also one issue with naive Bayes. Obviously, one way to fix this is to use a better prior distribution. So instead of kind of learning the prior distribution from data, you can actually learn a prior distribution. I mean, you can assume you have a prior distribution, and this is actually called smoothing. This is slightly more advanced topic, so I won't actually go over this in a lot of detail. Just again, I won't ask a question on this in the exam, but maybe you can just read up on this if you're interested. We saw that in the coin flipping case, we had a beta distribution. It turns out for the naive Bayes case over discrete spaces, we should use a Dirichlet prior, right? And this is essentially the distribution of the Dirichlet prior. And it turns out that this has a very intuitive kind of formulation. Okay, so maybe this is the last slide actually. So let's see. Yeah, this is the last slide. Okay, so what it turns out with the Dirichlet distribution, again, I'm not actually deriving this, but it turns out that a Dirichlet distribution has this kind of priors, right? So they have this parameters alpha 1 to alpha k, right? And here k is the number of labels. Okay, so what the Dirichlet prior does is that, imagine, so I'll just take p of y, right? So p of y that we saw with the naive Bayes was essentially saying that I take the count of the number of examples with y, right? Or actually in our notation, this was C of y divided by n, or actually divided by m, right? M is the total number of training examples. So what happens with the Dirichlet, with this prior, with this kind of nice prior distribution, is that with the prior, what I'll say is that my probability is C of y plus this alpha y, right, divided by m plus alpha y. So what this means is that if alpha y is 0, right? So I mean, sorry, if cy is 0, right, then you are actually kind of weighing this with the Dirichlet prior, right? And similarly, actually, you can also do this. You also have this as the prior of y comma xi, right? Or sorry, this is the okay. So maybe I'll just use this notation. So this is phi of y, and this quantity is phi of xi comma y, right? So this term is nothing but c, also count of xi comma y plus alpha y divided by cy plus alpha y, right? So what happens over here is that if my cy is 0, like what we saw in the case of the what we saw in the case, sorry, not cy is 0, cy will not be 0, cy may not be 0, right? But if c of xi comma y is 0, right? If this term is equal to 0, then I have this alpha y. So alpha y is this prior, right? So alpha y will typically be small. So for example, it will be 1 or 2 or something, right? So I'm doing some kind of a smoothing that I'm not setting the parameter phi of xi comma y to be 0, but I'm setting this this parameter to be c of xi comma y plus alpha y divided by c of y plus alpha y, right? Okay. So I think with this we'll actually we'll stop with naive Bayes, and in the next lecture we'll actually move on to logistic regression. So are there any questions until now?